Well, last night at 6 p.m. local time, the after-party began for the Arizona Republicans. It was a huge event, hundreds of people here, and media here from right across the world. And the reason the focus was so heavy on Arizona, and indeed the reason that we from GBNews came here to Arizona, was because, number one, a very important key swing state. If Blake Masters, who is the candidate for the Senate for the Republicans, was to win, well, it would have been a red wave, it would have been a red tsunami, as some were predicting. But if Blake Masters didn't win here, then it was pretty clear that the Republicans might get a majority in the Senate, but perhaps only by one seat or so. But the biggest reason that the world's media, including several British broadcasters, descended upon this place last night was because Kari Lake has hit this campaign like really something else. She is young, she is polished, she spent over 20 years as a local television presenter and reporter. She delivers very clear, unequivocal, and some would say incredibly tough messages. Indeed, there are many, including herself, who describe her as Trump in a dress. So the party gathered here from 6 p.m. and for the first couple of hours, it was pretty riotous, I have to say. Noisy, music, acts, singing. But as the evening went on, it became rather quieter. And by about midnight, people started to filter away. And that is because of the, I think, wildly over-optimistic expectations of many Republican politicians, supporters, and indeed press commentators. This talk of a red tsunami, this talk that New York State would fall to the Republicans, that maybe even New Hampshire would fall to the Republicans, has turned out just not to be true. So it's not a red tsunami, it's not a red wave, but it is a red ripple. Because even though expectations have not been met, we've still got many results to come in. It doesn't look like a complete disaster. Why do I say that? Well, I'm pretty sure that there is going to be a majority for the Republicans in the House, and that'll mean the end of Nancy Pelosi. It'll mean a Republican becomes the Speaker. In terms of the Senate, well, it's actually right now a little bit too tough to call. But I do think it looks to me like the Republicans will get Nevada, and I'm guessing it's going to be 51-49 to the Republicans. It could, though, turn out to be 50-50. And here, in the big race in Arizona, well, I'd very much hope to bring you live the new governor of Arizona, Kari Lake, who promised she'd come on the show, but the count is still going on. And that said, I think I'm 80% certain that Kari Lake is going to win and will probably declare within the next hour or two. So a big star comes into state politics in Arizona, but my feeling is she's going to be a big national figure too. But across the country, why were the polls wrong? Why was it that the Democrats got more votes than almost anybody anticipated? Well, my feeling is this, and we've seen this ever since Tony Blair introduced postal voting on demand in the United Kingdom. In any country where there is large-scale postal voting, it always seems to give, or nearly always seems to give, a majority to the Liberal left. Is it that the Liberal left are better organised on the ground? That could be part of the explanation. But as we've seen in the United Kingdom, as dozens of people have been to prison for postal ballot fraud, it is wide open to abuse, it is wide open to intimidation, and certainly, as we've seen in many of our big cities, within ethnic minorities, it has been repeatedly, horribly abused. Well, what happened here yesterday in Arizona is almost certain to lead to more rows. Over 50% of the votes that took place in this election in Arizona were votes on ballots that had been mailed out weeks and weeks in advance. In Nevada, over 70% of the vote is actually going to be a postal vote. Does that matter? Well, I'll tell you why it matters. Let's take the example of Pennsylvania, a straightforward race for the Senate between a guy called John Fetterman, 6'8", former athlete, but who very sadly suffered a deeply unpleasant stroke in May of this year. He was up against a celebrity candidate, Dr. Oz, who'd been backed by Donald Trump. The Democrats held off and held off and held off for the head-to-head debate on television to happen. It didn't take place until nearly the end of October. Yet, ballot papers were going out, believe it or not, in the third week of September. Nearly 2 months ago, ballot papers were going out in Pennsylvania asking people to vote. And by the time the debate took place, 1 million of the 3 million votes had already been cast, which meant nobody voting had an opportunity to have a look and examine the candidates, their calibre, or frankly, even the platforms that they were standing on. I'm going to show you a short clip now of that debate. Here is John Fetterman, and I am not, I promise you, I am not being cruel to somebody who very sadly has suffered a stroke, but I think from what you're about to see, you would yourself cast doubt whether he was the right guy to represent the state in the Senate. Have a look, have a listen to this.
I do support fracking, and I support fracking, and I stand, and I do support fracking.
That may not have changed your opinion, but isn't the point that if you're going to vote in elections for candidates to represent your state in the Senate, or in our country for an MP to represent you in Parliament, isn't it right and proper? Surely isn't it right and proper that you see the platform they're voting on, you see the calibre of the candidate, otherwise you might just as well be voting for a robot. Now, the one big standout state for the Republicans was Florida. A stunning victory for Ron DeSantis. He won that in 2018 by about 30,000 votes. This time, he stormed it. He's won it by 20%. Why has it happened? Three big reasons. One, huge numbers of people have deserted New York and elsewhere and come to a low-tax, low-regulation, pro-business state of Florida, and the vast majority of those are Republicans. Secondly, DeSantis has learned the lesson from 2020, and that lesson is very clear. The lesson is you have to clean up the electoral register. You have to make ballot harvesting a criminal offence. And DeSantis, to his credit, did all of those things and also went out and signed up a huge number of early Republican voters. The third reason, of course, being he himself, as governor, has performed admirably. All of that, of course, has led to huge speculation overnight as to whether he's going to challenge Donald Trump. I think he will challenge Donald Trump, but don't underestimate the loyalty that the Republican base, don't underestimate that loyalty they have to Donald Trump. But my big question for you, given the experiences that we've seen in Tower Hamlets, given the surprise we've seen here overnight in America, is does early voting change election results? Farage at gbnews.uk, because I think it does.